Today marks South Sudan's independence that achieved back in 2011. Now, it's the first year of independence, was characterized by economic hardships. Let's take a look at what we're looking at 2 years on for South Sudan. I'm joined by Julian Fisher, founder and managing director of intelligence consultancy Africa Integrity Services. Julian, thanks for joining us today, of course, joining us from London. So it's 2 years on. We know 2 years ago, 98% of southern Sudanese voted to sever their ties with Sudan. The dust certainly has settled. The reality, I suppose, has to kick in. Do you think independence has been a good thing in total?
Well, first, I'm delighted to join you, the answer to your question is independence a good thing for South Sudan? In my opinion, is categorically yes. I don't think there are very many South Sudanese who would want to go back to the status quo ante. It must be recalled that at least prior to the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement being adopted, that this was a country that was at war for some 30 out of 40 years. I've had it characterised to me by various South Sudanese that during that period they were treated like second-class citizens, if not slaves, in their own country. Mm-hmm. The past 2 years has undoubtedly been a difficult time for them. There have been numerous challenges, but there's been no doubt about the fact that the South Sudanese are a resilient people. Mm-hmm. And I think taking their situation now compared to what they were facing during the war years, it's a bit of a walk in the park for them. They'll come through this, and I think they'll emerge as a stronger young country in the future as a result of it. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah. The reality, of course, is that oil is still a major part of South Sudan and government revenues there. We know there's been ongoing battles between the oil pipeline that Sudan essentially has control of. Looking at the numbers so far for August, I mean, oil exports will be up 40% for South Sudan. Do you see stability in oil production and that being critical, of course, to the economy? Do you see that stability being returned right now to the economy?
Well, not if the president of Sudan, Bashir, has his way. He was talking just last month about threatening to close down the pipeline to Port Sudan for an indefinite period in retaliation for what he claims is sponsorship and support of rebel groups in Sudan by the South Sudanese government, claims which are strongly denied by the South Sudanese government. Mm-hmm. I think it's unlikely, while there is a reliance on the South, or Sudan rather, for South Sudan to export its oil, that there will be prospects for serious economic stability. This is why development of an alternative pipeline through the port at Lamu is such an important matter for President Salva Kiir. Mm-hmm. Partly explains why he's been at pains to maintain very cordial diplomatic relations with the newly elected president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we know ongoing ICC proceedings around Kenyatta. Let's not get into those politics there. Let's talk more about what government can do right now with the fiscal space it has and the budget it has. I mean, it has had to implement austerity as a result of the production being cut off from oil at the beginning of this year. But it seems that donors are coming to the party and playing their bit in terms of helping South Sudan. So talk to us about how stable and your government budget is right now in order to implement reforms and build infrastructure.
They're going to be crucially reliant upon the continued goodwill of some very important allies in the donor community, Britain not least among those, supported by Norway and the United States, of course. And it's slightly unfortunate, to my mind, that in May the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, which disbursed some $700 million of funds during the interim period and immediately after independence, closed its doors, as it were. That doesn't prevent the continuation of bilateral aid by any means, and bilateral aid will continue under the South Sudan Development Plan, which was brokered in agreement with the main donors. But I think it's something of a shame that there will no longer be a single port of negotiation and support to the country, especially considering what we've just been discussing, the possibility of further interruption to oil exports some 2 or 3 months after the oil started flowing again.
And of course, ultimately you have to judge what the country has been able to deliver, or the presidency in the last 2 years. I mean, how do you rate the progress when it comes to building the roads, building the infrastructure, building the schools? I mean, so much to do, such a short period of time, but what's the progress been to date?
Well, I preface my comments with the observation that it's not surprising that progress has been patchy and difficult and slow. It is only 2 years since independence was won. They do continue to face a hostile neighbour to their north, and they were building a country pretty much from ground zero. The implication of all this is that there's a great disparity between development of Juba, which in many ways now is beginning to look more and more like a functioning world city, and those areas outside of Juba. Mm-hmm. The concentrations tended to be on the infrastructure around the capital for understandable reasons, but with insecurity plaguing other parts of the country, and the lack of funds available following the shutdown of oil production, and perhaps as a result of corruption, which has been a fairly significant problem over the past 8 or 9 years or so. We've yet to see some of that peace dividends beginning to affect the wider country beyond the capital.
Mm-hmm. And as you say, I mean, ultimately you'd assume that the people would call for change that is the widespread, and certainly, that's equitable growth is felt by the entire South Sudanese population. Do you see that this could threaten the government's stability, or perhaps threaten the president's ability to win next year's election?
I don't think that for a moment. I think if Salva Kiir would decide to run again for the presidency, he would be returned with an overwhelming majority. He is in many ways an extremely popular leader who was seen as delivering independence in a way that even the iconic John Garang failed to do so before him. And it's no coincidence that you see images of the two men prominently displayed in pretty much all public parts of South Sudan, beyond Juba as well. Mm-hmm. With respect to political support, one has to be conscious, of course, in South Sudan of the difficulties created by a degree of tribal or ethnic animosity, certainly between the two larger ethnic groups, the Dinka, which is Salva Kiir's ethnic grouping, and the Nuer, which is that of his Vice President Riek Machar. Mm-hmm. Riek Machar himself, I think, would dearly love to become the next president of South Sudan, but I'm not sure it's going to happen quite yet. Mm-hmm. And while there may be some drawdown on support for President Salva as a result of those inter-ethnic differences, I can't see his position seriously being threatened in anything like the near term.